What's up, everybody?
Welcome live.
And we are live. Price to sell in the best condo building in Toronto, where I have my listing. 55 Merchants Wharf, Unit 222. Just dropped the price actually, 1.998. Best waterfront listing in the city of Toronto, and this is the party room.
I saw the unit. It's a wonderful unit. Should go fairly soon, not with the new price. But today we've got a very special episode. We've got the one and only Jonathan Harvey. I'm sure you've seen his content. If you don't follow him already, go and do it. It's Jonathan Harvey, right?
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Hey, question. So do you, like, how does your family feel when you eat McDonald's or Burger King or Wendy's?
I don't really eat it much at all.
Okay, because Harvey's.
Yeah, fair enough. You're kind of
Yeah.
like you're being a trader. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what the thing is? Harvey's makes probably the best like regular burger. That or like A&W. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no, we didn't really stick to the. Didn't really,
Okay, so it's not like a thing?
Nah.
Okay.
First of all,
Cool.
you can tell like he's completely jacked.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, it's
Black. I wore black. It's thinning. I was like, I won't look that big.
I could tell your body fat. What's your body fat? Let's guess.
Yeah.
10%?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You do measure because Jonathan is a fitness buff. You also compete.
I did. So I competed for 4 or 5 years in men's physique. So it's the one where you wear like board shorts, not the little underwear. If I ever went back to it though, I'd wear the little underwear. I would.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would. So like they opened up this category called classic physique after, which definitely suits my body more. But honestly, it's so taxing. Like to get your body into that condition, it's not just about eating and training. It's basically a full-time job because you will not be able to compete with the top dogs unless you make it a full-time gig. You just have to. Like you got to sleep more, you got to train, and it's really really hard on your mind. Like, you know, as I'm getting older, maybe it wouldn't be quite as bad. But when I was younger, like your mood swings are pretty serious because your body fat's so low, your hormones are all out of whack, and it's so you can get on stage for fucking 30 seconds and squeeze your heart out.
Yeah,
Like,
is
that's
that
pretty much it.
unhealthy?
No, it's terrible. It's terrible for you. Yeah.
But you gotta like not consume any salt because you don't want water retention. Blah blah blah.
That's a bit of a fallacy. You can kind of so if you keep the same amount of salt in your system all the time, your body manages it. So there's kind of a changing thought process around salt these days. Everybody's like, oh, it's bad for you, high blood pressure. It's not really if you eat the right kind of salt and if you're consistent with the volume of salt that you consume. So you have two hormones that get released when you consume salt. The main one's aldosterone. And when that what that does is it just kind of balances the intake in and out of your body. And if you're training all the time too, it doesn't really matter because you're sweating so much. But it's when you spike it. It's when you massively increase it or decrease it. That's when it's harder on your body. That's when you see bigger problems usually. So that's not really a big issue. You do sort of manipulate your water intake right near the show. So what you'll do is you'll load it for like 5 or 6 days. And then you just kind of drop it off a cliff. So your body's used to getting rid of everything. So it continues to flush itself out. So that's kind of like sort of low level stuff. But when you're all the way to the top, these guys are stabbing themselves with insulin needles, with insulin needles before they go on stage. Like it's pretty intense.
Do you follow an account called Goob? Do you know
No,
Goob?
I don't think so.
So he's a guy. He's got about 600,000 followers.
Goob.
Goob. Funny sounding name, but he's like he calls out every celebrity and every fitness person who edits their photos.
Right.
And he's like he trolls these people and it's crazy. He'll like call them out, zoom in on their photos. He recently started doing celebrities, which Cardi B.
Oh, I know this guy.
Yeah.
Because I was with the boys in Tulum, and he called out someone, I believe.
Yeah, I think he's actually on the show, Money Buys
Yeah,
Happiness.
interesting.
But you must see a lot of that too, because people get involved in bodybuilding, so consumed by it that they like will go to lengths to get the awards or the accolades.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. If you want to so I competed at the Arnold's in 2015. So at the time, it still might be today the biggest bodybuilding show in history. I'm not sure, just by volume of participants. And it's a global, it's an international show. So I was beyond Canada. And at that level, like everybody there is pretty much taking a heavy dose of gear. And the thing is, like I got lucky that my whole life I was an athlete and my body likes to grow. It likes being in the gym. A lot of people, I think there's like a number about maybe 17 to 20% that go to the gym all the time and they won't get the results from lifting weights. It's just not within their genetics. It's unfortunate. They'll still be healthy, but you don't get big. And so it just doesn't happen that way. But a lot of this bodybuilding stuff, a lot of it is genetics, like your muscle insertion, your symmetry, things you can't really do anything about. And these people are trying to beat that with drugs. And the problem is it does get addictive for a lot of these people. And it can be a rather it can be a rather sour culture to be a part of. You know, I never really participated in it because I got in older. Like I started doing bodybuilding when I was 29. But again, like I've trained since I was 15. So it was just like, oh, okay, I'll do a little extra. It wasn't.
What did you train in?
Just, what do you mean?
When you were 15? Like
I just played sports. So I'm a half pint. I'm 5'7", right? So I consider myself a super athlete. I was pretty good when I was a kid. But when I'm competing with these guys that had gone through puberty at a younger age and they're 6 feet tall and I'm fucking 5'2" at the time, I started lifting weights to try to keep up. And then it just became like somewhat for vanity, of course. You're 15, 16, you know what I mean? You're trying to pick up girls or whatever you're into. So you go to the gym and then, you know, it just kind of became a way of life for me. So I've worked out pretty much solid for 23, 24 years. I've never really stopped, you know?
Nice.
A couple of weeks off here and there, but that's it.
I went through puberty at 24.
Yeah, nice. How's that work?
Really?
Yeah.
I'm still, you know
He's
what's
not
funny?
joking.
Yeah, it was good. It was great.
Still got another growth spurt coming?
I might.
Yeah.
Doctor said it's supposed to be 6'4".
Fuck yeah, right.
So
He's
31
still working
now.
on that beard, actually.
Still working on the beard.
You know what? Actually, it's funny. Like
I might be that 17%.
You look pretty good, man. Give yourself a break.
Thanks.
It's funny actually. I grew an inch from when I was 23 to 24.
Okay.
So
Super
lucky.
weird, eh?
Interesting.
So lucky.
Yeah, it was super odd. I was like, what's going on here? Yeah. I
like that.
I keep hoping for another, but I don't think it's happening.
I'm still aiming for that extra inch.
One can hope.
I don't know about you, but growing up in high school, like not growing as tall as like my peers, it affected me in a certain way.
For sure.
Like it made me feel like, you know, oh, everyone's growing taller than me. Like what's wrong with me? But I feel, looking back at it now, I feel like it pushed me in the right direction. Instead of like being the party type, going out like, you know, chasing after girls, I was like, oh, like I'm shorter. Like, and I started focusing on other things like my hobbies, getting into like renovations, getting into real estate stuff. And I feel like that kind of launched my real estate career and gave me a head start. Like that's because of that, I focused more of my money, spending it instead of on clubs and going out, focused it more on buying a house with my dad.
Interesting.
And I always attribute it to that. I'm like, if I was a tall, good-looking guy, would I still be down this path, or would I not be with 6 kids, like at the club somewhere, like probably drugged out? You know what I mean? Like down the drain. You know?
Everybody's got their phases. I mean,
Yeah.
It was interesting for me. I still did pretty well in high school because I played sports. You know, I grew up in a small town too, up in Aurelia. There's 35,000 people. Everybody kind of knows each other. And, you know, like I fucked around a lot when I was a kid. I enjoyed it. But I do think, you know, there's times in your life where you face adversity and then you kind of go left or right. And it either consumes you and you become terrible, or you get sort of the victimology mindset, or you take it and you get the victor mindset, right?
Yeah.
And that's something I think adults, they get a lot better as they get older, where they face adversity and they become better for it. But when you're young, that's pretty hard. So, I mean, I give you credit for that. Like for me, you know, being short, it really only bothered me till I was about 16, 17. Funny enough, like even though that was pretty early on in my journey, I kind of recognized, I'm like, hey, I think similar to you, I did something different with it, but I was like, hey, I have strengths in these other areas. And it didn't really affect me. You know what I
That's
mean?
where the sports come in, though.
Yeah.
Because I think sports give you a feeling of accomplishment and, and a fulfillment. At the time, my parents were divorced, blah, blah, blah. I didn't have the sports. I fell off.
Right.
And then dealing with the shortness, it was a bit of a tough time.
Parents are divorced?
Parents are divorced.
Same, man.
Yeah.
Another common thing there.
Are your parents together? Yeah, okay. Well, that's great.
We'll still props you.
Yeah.
But we just really wanted that
Yeah,
secretly.
that's nice.
Well, that's one thing. It's like me and my wife like made a pact. Like obviously getting married, that's a pact.
That's sort of packed in and of itself, yep.
But even above and beyond that, because you know people get married and it doesn't really mean much to them. But for us, it was like we're never getting divorced.
Super packed.
Doesn't matter what we're doing. Like we're gonna work on this. And I feel like some of the arranged marriages you see, like especially from like India, let's say.
Yep.
Because you watch the shows on Netflix, whatever. Arranged marriages last better than like the Canadian marriages, where people pick their partners and end up falling apart.
I think they go in with a different set of ideas and how the relationship's going to work. So a lot of times you have a relationship here and you think the other person's going to work for you to kind of suit your needs. But when you come from, say, an arranged marriage, or maybe the way you and I look at our relationships, is you go, it's going to be work. So it starts with the foundation of going, we're both going to have to put an effort to make this work. And when you have that idea, you have compromise. So things always do sort of come together. Like, it's funny, my parents don't always get along, right? And I thought probably they'd split up a couple times over the years. They never did. They worked through it, which is great. But my wife and I don't even get to that point. We don't, like, we're both pretty extreme humans. Like, the both of us are bulldogs. So neither one runs the other one over, which is great. But we don't even, we never drum up the past. We never have issues that are unresolved. We go at it with each other about whatever's happening, and then we just move on and we're good. You know, like a duck, flop your wings and fucking move on. And I attribute it to our ability to communicate. We both prioritize that. And I think I would suggest, and obviously I'm pulling this number out of the air, but I bet 80 to 90% of relationships that break apart are because of poor communication, because these people in that large majority, they got together because they loved each other and it did work. It wasn't maybe for some nefarious purpose or taking someone's money or a green card or whatever the fuck people do, but they got together because they loved each other. And I think a lot of times, if you go that far with someone, you're kind of past the dating phase. You know, you do care about them. And if you just learn to communicate properly and kind of grow together, like you start here, right? And we're doing this with our wives. But a lot of times this happens and then people end up at different places and they're not willing to put the work to bring themselves back together. So it's unfortunate, but
COVID was a big reminder of that. I think it woke a lot of people up. There's a lot of divorces during COVID because people were forced to stay.
Yes, actually had to spend time together.
Had to spend time together, but also like people who were kind of on the borderline, like they didn't love their partner the same way, but they made it work because they were separated. They did their own thing throughout the day. They came home, they put up with each other, but then COVID hit. It's like, you got to see each other and you got to work this thing out.
Yes.
Or get the hell out.
Yeah, you had to sort of face your demons in a sense.
Your demons. So tell me a little bit.
I was gonna switch topic quickly.
Yeah, shoot.
You're a big Christmas guy.
Love Christmas.
Okay, I want to show you something.
Sure.
And Danny, pull up that link. Just something I found. I feel like you really like this guy too. So it's like probably your two favorite things in one picture.
Let's see what you got.
But so there's a recent post.
He's for sure seen this.
Canadian government declares that Christmas is racist and rooted in colonialism.
Yeah, this is so good.
So I just want to know your thoughts on that.
Okay, well, I have to give Trudeau and the rest of the gang credit because they unanimously voted to basically, I forget, I'm sorry, my head's just not thinking of a particular word. They unanimously voted against what the Human Rights Commission had said, saying that, Christmas is, what was the word they used? A religious, I don't know, basically religiously offensive. But my problem is this. It was good that all the MPs got on the same page about something, saying, no, guys, it's Christmas. Come on. People from all different cultures celebrated in their own way. No one's got any problem with it. In fact, I think it was like 6% of the country had an issue with it after doing their big poll. Like, come on, fuck off. Why are we spending taxpayer dollars on the human rights well, first of all, why are we spending it with the Human Rights Commission at all? I think they just do mainly bullshit work. But anyway, on something like that, like, where's the checks and balances to sort of monitor these guys? Because if they're like, what we're going to do? We're going to try to cancel Christmas. I go, like hell you are. Like, you're not spending any money or time on this. It's not happening. And these people have judicial powers. So they could actually, if they did implement something, which they can't, but because of the vote, obviously, but if they did, they would be able to bring some sort of penalty towards businesses that were seen as, what's the word, like, I don't know, like kind of going against other religions, I suppose. It's not really that, you know what I mean? But there was some talk of this being sort of a legal issue for businesses because they were canceling Christmas. It's just stupid. It's nonsense. Look, I don't care what anybody here celebrates. Celebrate.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Have fun with it. Why would you penalize the rest of us for wanting to do the same thing?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. And Christmas, bro, what we said before we got on the show, Christmas is like the most nostalgic time for most people.
It is.
It makes you feel like you're a little kid again. Even if you have your own kids, you feel like a little kid. You go back to when life was easy. Times were safe. It's like a warm blanket.
Yeah.
And as you get older, you stop just appreciating the one day. You kind of appreciate the season. So who in their right mind would say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and try to cancel this? Like, are you trying to justify your job by doing this? Come on.
But let's be honest a little bit. There's an underlying agenda. So they're canceling Christmas, but there's also this cancel culture
For sure.
that constantly is picking at things one at a time, and it's almost like they want to take away all the culture, all the different like things that make us all different, and they want to just cancel everything.
Yes.
And changing history and taking things down, changing the names, and it's a tough thing because it's like what's going to be left to even celebrate or to identify as, right?
Well, I think what's happening is you're seeing pushback. So what happens, like, I don't remember what the theory's called, but it's this idea that if things are bad but not terrible, you'll put up with it. right? But if it's terrible, you'll do something about it. You go, nope, enough's enough, right? And I think you're seeing that with society these days, where they come up with these ideas like, hey, we're going to cancel this, and we're going to. A good example is kind of the gender ideology in schools. So the 1 million march, those are people from all different, colors, races, everything going, nope, we don't want this shit being taught to our kids. We don't want this. This is preposterous. It doesn't make any sense. It was created 10 years ago, and you're rewarding, changing sexual identity at an age when you don't understand the ramifications of your decision. We don't want you to teach this in school. So they stood up and pushed back, right? And you're seeing it again, obviously, with this Christmas stuff. I don't know if you guys remember, but like 10 years ago, you couldn't say Merry Christmas. That was a problem. And now they've gotten to the point where they're like, oh, you're going to try to cancel Christmas? Now they're saying Merry Christmas in Parliament. So you're seeing they're actually working their way back. They're finding their way back to some balance here. And humans do this. We like to be extreme. The pendulum swings all the way over here, then all the way over here, and we find some balance. And I think that's what you're seeing. Like, what you're saying is not inaccurate. They tore down all those statues over the last decade. But they kind of stopped doing that. They stopped trying to change a lot of history. They've slowed down because I find what's happening is people have had enough. We were talking about this a little bit before, but the silent majority is not really being silent anymore. And excuse me, if you think about like how politics work, they use something called the Overton window. The Overton window is like an acceptable gap in society that a politician can live within. They can only talk about and deal with things within this particular window. And, this thing moves over time with culture, and they try to shape it, and so do a lot of other people. But what's happening is, I believe that it's, let's say it was up here being the extreme. I believe it's lowering because the silent majority is saying more. So you can't do some of the wild stuff you could do, like the gender ideology. We're not tearing down statues. We're not getting rid of Christmas. Even though it still feels like things are fucked up, we are getting more balance. We are swinging back to the center. And you're seeing this a lot in politics. So you're seeing it a lot in Europe right now. You're seeing the new, I think it's a president, might be prime minister of the Netherlands. They say far right populist. He's not. He's pretty centered. He just goes, we have an immigration issue and we have all these other problems. We're going to address them, right? You're seeing it. Poland, literally everybody in Europe is actually tightening up. The UK said they're going to start doing it now too. They're implementing these rules now where they're starting to correct course, and you're seeing a lot of governments switch. For better or worse, they're switching to the right. Now, I'm not really any one political party, and definitely not all of one political party. I think that shows a lack of independent thinking. But right now, I can say unequivocally that a conservative government in Canada would help correct course. Now, what's happened is, at scale, you've seen sort of this encompassing liberal ideology that's happened throughout Europe and throughout the West. And they were sort of moving as this super PAC. So what's happened is, they were really, really hard to penetrate and really hard to break down. And they were passing these rules throughout society in all different countries all over these nations that were sort of aligned in the West. But now that that's getting broken down, that is why I believe this Overton window is kind of starting to drop, because things are not only becoming unacceptable here, they're becoming unacceptable in Europe and the United States and all over the world. So I do actually think we're working towards balance, and I think we'll sort of see it come to a really, like, it'll really come to, like, it'll meet its precipice, I suppose, in the next few years when we do have the opportunity to have a conservative government. I think that at that point, you will see a lot of the things that have been bothering us over the last few years, they'll be gone.
Yeah, because every so often you get swayed to one direction or another,
Right.
and then someone else comes in power and brings that needle back to the center.
Exactly.
And essentially that's what you're saying, and what the way you've put it kind of makes it gives it a positive spin, because you're like, with these issues comes answers. And comes people voicing their opinions, and then you get that balance again, which is actually a great way to put it. Let's go back a little bit about you.
Sure.
Because you seem like a super smart dude, well articulated, well spoken, and you have all this knowledge.
I've forgotten a lot of words today already. It seems, look, I slept that well last night. Yeah, let's see how it goes.
Well, but
Still no more than me on a good day.
Yeah. Have you seen his clips of real estate jargons videos?
No, I haven't. I'll have to look them up though. But I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, tell us a little bit, because I did a little bit of research on you. I know you had the Feed, which is a rotisserie chicken joint.
Yep.
In Etobicoke, I think it was.
I was in Mississauga.
Mississauga.
Yep.
Which was like healthy food for athletes, like that. It was
Yep.
like that
Yep.
kind of angle. You also had the Nacho Bar.
Nacho bar, yeah.
On the Danforth.
So I've had 15 restaurants.
15.
Wow.
15 in
shoot.
total, yeah.
Okay, I
So
only
I've
had like Yeah, six
So
of them.
I had some in the Cayman Islands, and then I had the majority of them here, obviously in Canada. But to be quite honest with you on that note, trying to get out of the business more than anything. We sold this year. We sold the feed. We sold Bonsai as well, which was like a half Southeast Asian place. My favorite place, actually, the best food we've had of any restaurant. The only place we have left is Nomads right now. So Nomads is in Port Credit. So I've had a couple of those as well. We just got kneecapped, honestly, by government decisions through COVID. You know, we were closed for 500 and some odd days, and restaurants are already a tough business, but we knew the business. We knew the business, so we can make it work. But what happened between, now and when COVID started is they added a fifth element to knowing your business. It's not really like what you know about the business, what you know about the economy, how hard you're willing to work. They added this additional one where it goes government intervention. So all the things you think you know don't matter anymore because we can shut you down. And unfortunately, you can't keep a business afloat that's brick and mortar when you're closed for close to 2 years, but you still have to consume expenses. And then their Band-Aid solution is to try to hand you loans. So the bigger problem, is that our government thinks that that's an acceptable thing to do, perhaps. I mean, obviously, our industry got just smoked. But, for me, it was less about that and why we're getting out of the restaurants, and more so because consumer behavior has now changed. People aren't eating out as often. The economy's in rough shape, so people don't have the disposable income. So that kind of has just changed us getting back on track. But
So how did you get into the whole real restaurant field? Because it's a very, even growing up as a kid, when I considered different businesses, restaurant was something that I always I thought was a really tough business.
it is.
It's
Don't
not
do
for
it.
anyone. Yeah, but how could you have 15 if you you live and you learn?
Yeah.
The food can go bad. You have shelf life on things. You have staff that you're dealing with. Probably
Right.
minimum wage jobs. People don't show up. People
transient.
get sick.
Yeah.
It's very dynamic. You're constantly there, right?
Yeah. So for us, the restaurants are like a lot of other businesses where you do better with scale. So that's why we're doing more and more. And also the other thing too, like anything else, if you know what you're doing within the business, you can do well. And I grew up working in them. So no one in my family really had them, but I grew up, washing dishes when I started when I was 15. Started working when I was 12, washing golf clubs at a golf course beside my house. It was great. By 15, I was working in restaurants. And it was just always kind of one of those things I did to sort of live the dream as an entrepreneur. So, by 18, 19, I was bartending. And then by the time I was in my mid-20s, I kind of knew everything about restaurants. So I started owning them. And we just had momentum, so we kept going. But also, because we had momentum, people would come to us with opportunities. So if there was a good location available, I would get the call before it would ever hit the market. So things like that would sort of happen, and then you figure out a way to leverage your value. When you're young, you think you need a lot of money to start as an entrepreneur, but you don't. You need a skill set, right? If you're really good at what you do, you can go to somebody with money and you can say, hey, look, you want to invest in this restaurant? Great. I get 20% because I can do all the work. It's good value. You parlay that into your next one, and your next one. Now all of a sudden you're the majority owner. There are ways to sort of get away with that, and that was my model. That's what I did. So that's really why we did the restaurant thing. And to be quite honest with you, we were very profitable before COVID. I was in good shape. I had built zero to a multi-7-figure business on my own, and everything was pretty good. And then we got kneecapped. So, the reason we're getting out is sort of twofold. One, the restaurant business kind of feels like a wife that cheated on you right now. She sucked his dick. She said she's not going to do it again, but she already did it. So you're kind of like, I don't know, man. I don't know if this is for me. The other thing too is as an entrepreneur, you work hard as an entrepreneur to increase your skill set, right? Yeah. So I don't have a level 10 skill set as an entrepreneur, but I want to. But you start at zero. And as you get better at being an entrepreneur, you try to find opportunities that suit the level of your skill set, or maybe even harder to push you, right? So if you're a 7, your skill set's a 7, you want maybe an 8 or a 9. And I can appreciate that. But what's happened with restaurants is they've become a level 2 opportunity. And that is because of the government. That is because of what they did to the economy. And it's also because the disproportionate, the economics are wonky in that the price for rent now doesn't even make any sense. And now the minimum wage has gone up again, so it's in the $16.50 range. So it just doesn't quite add up. And when that kind of stuff happens, you need to increase your prices so rapidly that the market's not willing to adopt it. And when you're surrounded by a bunch of small businesses, not corporate, but small, they don't pay enough attention to their economics. So they're not looking at their numbers every day or every week. They're looking at them maybe quarterly. Oh, fuck, we lost money this quarter. Yeah, you did. You should have adjusted your prices 4 months ago. But because they don't do that, if you're next door and you do, how do you survive? Because now you priced yourself out of the market. So this is just sort of where that business is at these days. And I think it will settle and reestablish itself. Food will be more money for sure. It's going to happen. But for now, I don't really want to weather that storm. And like I said, for a level 2 opportunity, my skill set is well beyond that at this point. So I'm better off just chasing other things.
That's good. Do you think Sophie Trudeau is sexy?
Sorry, what?
I'm gonna throw curveballs at you this whole.
Yeah,
this
I
whole-
didn't. I actually didn't hear you, but shoot.
Yeah. Do you think Sophie Trudeau is sexy?
You know what? I commented on this in another podcast, and my wife's like, "You're a dirtbag." So I declined to answer.
You decline. Okay. No problem.
Yeah, you know what? I don't think she's bad looking. I think she's a little old for me. How's that?
Okay. Fair enough. Safe.
Right.
I don't know what she looks like.
Neither do I, to be honest.
Yeah.
But one
Yeah.
thing I did notice that you're very close to your brother, your little brother.
Yeah, younger brother. Yeah.
Yeah,
He actually moved. He moved up to Caledon a couple of years ago, so you don't see as much of each other anymore.
As you could tell, I creeped your Facebook a little bit.
Hey, you're kind of weird. I like it.
Yeah. Well, you got to learn about your guests
I'm
and
just
stuff
fucking
like
with you.
that.
I'm just fucking with you.
I want to get you to react to one of your own videos because we're realtors. A lot of our audience are realtors, and this is very relatable. So I'd love to segue using this clip. Dan, you know which one? His reel? Okay. So this one here. Restart that with volume.
Trying to think of what
You playing it
stupid
on the
shit
live?
I did.
It's a good one. It's a good topic.
Remember this one?
Immigration. Yeah.
Yeah. So first off, before we get into that, people think I look like Zelensky. True
Nice.
or false?
Not really, no.
No, I get it all the time.
Like maybe from a distance, like across the room.
We're gonna debunk it.
Yeah.
I don't.
He's also a little guy. He's my height, bro.
I think
Cool.
he's more like my height.
Nice.
I don't look like Zelensky.
A lot of these
People-
world leaders are smaller than I thought.
Yeah, very.
Just
Yeah,
stop comparing me
little
to
Napoleon
Zelensky.
syndrome. Let's
if you
go.
don't mind out there. It's either Pedro Pascal or Zelensky. I could be like a both. I could be like a Pedro Zelensky, or I don't even know his first name.
I like where you landed. Let's go with that.
Thanks. But to that point, the immigration, all the people coming in here, the people not even accounted for.
Yeah.
How do you think that affects our real estate climate?
Traumatic. So we've. Let me gather my thoughts. For starters, we have a housing crisis on our hands, primarily driven by our government, right? We've got the lowest number of homes per capita in the G7, and we are only building as many homes this year or in 2022 as we did in 1972, right? 230,000 actually to 220,000. So we built more in 1972, but our population was only about half the size. So this is an infrastructure problem. So really where you got to point to first is kind of your critical infrastructure, and you got to point at the people in charge. So how can they fix the problem? Well, or how have they made it worse, I guess, first? Why is this such a big issue? Supply and demand is pretty simple, right? We've got the most land in the country, in the world, of vacant land, pretty much. People are like, oh, well, a bunch of it's up north, can't use it. I'm talking about land we can use. We still dramatically outpace anybody in the G7. So we have just done a very poor job of building infrastructure at the same time as we've been building immigration, which is such a weird thing because it helps the economy grow. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a stupid thing that we have all these measures in place to stop people from building. Like, we're 35th out of 36 OECD nations in time it takes to get permits. And same thing to go from raw land to finished product, which is wild. It doesn't make any sense, right? It's just all bullshit. And a lot of it is like government taxes on homes too that are kind of increasing the price. So there's a lot of infrastructure. There's a lot of like political issues with why this is such a mess. Now, specifically, I suppose to your question with immigration, if we could fix our ability to scale homes, the immigration wouldn't be as big a problem, right? But right now, okay, so let's just do some math. Right now, the CMHC says we need 3.5 million homes by 2030, right? So if we're building 220 to 250,000 a year, between now and 2030, we're not even gonna get halfway there, right? But let's say we're building, 220, same number we built this year. Now, if you're letting 500,000 people a year into the country, let's just exclude refugees, asylum seekers, and non-permanent residents. You're letting 500,000 people a year into the country. Now, if you look at the average number of people per home in Canada, according to Statistics Canada, that's 2.5, 2.49, we'll say 2.5. So when you look at that number, if you let 500,000 people in a year, then you need 200,000 of those homes to go to those people. So if you only build 220,000 homes, that means you only built 20,000 homes for the residents you currently have. Now, if the CMHC says we need to build 3.5 million homes, how do we ever catch up if we're only able to build 20,000 homes a year? Now, that's not accounting for internal growth of our population too, me having kids. Yeah. Now, I know we're on a decline, but there's probably some other numbers you can factor in there to say, hey, at this pace, this just continues to get worse. We're basically we're not gonna be able to get our head above water.
Well, he's about to have a sixth.
Yeah, so you're doing work for all of us. Fuck.
I'm like, I wish I lived in Japan because I think they're paying people to have kids now.
Oh, really? I think that's happening in a lot of places.
In a lot of places, yeah.
So, like, if you ask, like, the issue of immigration, look, I think immigration is a good thing in the sense that, like, I can appreciate having diversity in culture, but it can really only grow as fast as your critical infrastructure. That's the reality. So, as fast as your healthcare, your economy, your housing can sort of afford. And we obviously can't. We can't right now. So people are like, oh, that's xenophobic if they think that. But it's like, how is it xenophobic for me saying we should take care of the people who are here first? We already have the most multicultural city in the world. I'm not saying kick anybody out. I'm saying we take care of who is here now.
Yeah, or slow it down a little bit.
But you pretty much, yeah. Here's the problem. We've built our GDP off immigration since World War II, primarily, right? It's been a big part of it. So for these politicians, if they don't let a couple hundred thousand people in every year at a minimum, they're putting themselves at a political disadvantage in terms of their GDP. So it's going to happen no matter what. It's just that right now it's running rampant, and I think Trudeau is trying to do this to bolster maybe GDP or just voting favor. Because at this point, I think it's hurting GDP. Because honestly, a lot of the people, like, our threshold has dropped, right? So before, if you wanted to come to the country, you had to meet a certain threshold in terms of what you could bring to the country. And this doesn't just mean money. It means capability, bring business, bring something, skill, exactly. But now that's kind of non-existent. And that's why you're seeing 6 out of 10 new immigrants over the last 2 years can't find consistent work. So when you're looking at that, you go, okay, so this is actually a bigger drain on society, not just in terms of housing, but economically as well, because you have to pay them to stay here. So all around, it needs reform, which is kind of what we were talking about earlier. You're seeing it all over Europe. You're seeing it all over the world. People are kind of getting away from this globalist consensus on open borders. They're changing it. And they're starting to take care of the people in their own countries. I don't think Trudeau's the guy. I think he's going to continue singing the same song until he's out of office. So we'll have to deal with it for another year and a half or so. But, you know, the positive is I think it creates some really good opportunities in real estate development.
Okay.
You know, so there's...
In what way?
Go build homes.
Yeah.
You know, there are obviously these things in your way, like the amount of taxes you're going to pay to put up a home. I think in Ontario, you can pay as much as $165,000 for parking spaces if you want a new home, just in taxes. You know, I think the development charges in Ontario are around like $135,000 for new homes.
Yeah.
So you look at it, like, it's preposterous, but that's why the price of homes is so high. And you also don't have to build here. You can build in other places. But if you think about it, we have a housing shortage. We will have a consistent housing shortage in this country for probably the next 20 years, right? And even though I think Pierre Poilievre is going to do a lot to write the course for the country, he's not anti-immigration. It's not going to stop. He might drive that number down to 300,000, but it's still going to happen. Maybe 250,000, but still going to happen, right? So I think, you know, if you've got the wherewithal or the understanding of development, I think it's a really, really good opportunity. In fact, if we stay here long term, I'll be spending a lot of my time in that arena for sure.
Interesting.
There's a few issues with immigration and also like building, because I used to think the same way when I first started my real estate career, and people were like, because it's always been the same thing. We're short on homes, we're short on housing. And I'm like, why don't you just keep building, because we have lots of land. The problem is there's the infrastructure, like having the hospitals, community centers, the schools, the libraries. There's a bunch of amenities that you need before you start up a village, or
community,
a town, a community.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of issues and obstacles, I guess, along the way that, you know, you'd have to look into and see how easy is it. But now they're coming out with these like portable homes, like these mobile home solutions that are like $20,000 for like new refugees or something like that. That was on 6plus, I think.
Oh yeah.
It's like a solution that's being presented, and I hope we don't go in that direction, because it's really ghetto.
Sounds like a Band-Aid on a broken leg.
Exactly. Yeah. But it is a weird time to be letting in so many people, like sky high, record breaking
Yeah.
amounts of people coming into the country. And like you said, some are coming in with, work permits, whatever. Some are coming in as international students. And then they use that to try to stay here. I think the numbers were like 800,000 or something like that, or 2022. Is that 600,000 you're talking about? Is that
Yeah, I think the 600,000 was like the non-permanent residents.
Okay.
And like refugee, yeah.
So let's go back a little bit about your Blender news.
Yes.
Because this is something that is interesting to me, and you've come up with a solution to be able to show both sides of the story, not be biased as much as possible.
As much as possible. I was going to
As
say,
much
yeah,
as
let's say as
possible.
much as possible.
It's very difficult. I mean, even with the big news outlets out there, it's always controlled by somebody.
They're
who's
very
got-
biased.
They're
right?
very biased.
And I find my bias comes in when I don't like someone. I know that sounds weird, but like genuinely, like if I don't like someone, I tend to have a bit of like Trudeau, for example. But the thing is, I give myself a little credit that I don't like someone for no reason. You have to have a track record of doing bad things for me to say I don't like that person. I don't mean personally, I don't know the guy. I mean, as a politician or as sort of like a media target. You have to do a lot of stuff where I stop sort of trusting you, but that is definitely a bit of a blind spot for
and
sure.
you seem like you have a very good memory, so you'll be holding grudges, right?
Well, I just feel like you pay attention to history. You know what I mean? You can always trust people to do what they've done.
Yeah, but you're like a walking Wikipedia. Like he's got all the
Yeah,
stats.
it's admirable.
Yeah. Do you know how many people leave the country on a yearly basis?
No, I don't actually know that number.
Because that's also an interesting fact. Like
For
how many
sure.
people are coming into the province?
Yeah.
How many people are leaving? And
Do you play brain training games?
No, I don't have time. to
he
be honest
doesn't
with you.
need it.
I
We
still have
should
time.
be.
What sharpens the shed for you?
It just
tools.
doesn't turn off. No, I just keep.
Interesting.
Yeah, you know what it is, honestly. I like to consume information. You know what I would suggest is that I'm curious. It doesn't really matter if it's economics, engineering, geography, anything really. Like I'm just curious. So I
Yeah.
find something and I want to know about it. And a lot of it sticks, a lot of it doesn't. Don't get me wrong. Like
Yeah.
these statistics that are in my mind, I've obviously consumed recently. Because if you ask me again in a month, maybe not. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
But-
it's hard with all this information.
It
like,
is,
coming
but
at you.
that's the thing. Like to sort of to your point with Blender News is because I'm doing the news every day. So I'll tell everybody what Blender News. Blender News is sort of like where news meets rational thinking. That's kind of the idea, and it was about blending the left with the right and kind of giving people a more comprehensive view of reality. So in doing that, I created this independent news network that is currently a newsletter which goes out 6 days a week. Now, the newsletter, if you saved it and downloaded it, it's 15 pages approximately every day in a PDF, and it's got photos and stuff. But I do that all on my own. I do that by myself every day.
You type it up.
Yeah, I do the whole fucking
No
thing.
chat GPT.
No, because the thing is, it's where news meets rational thinking. So I have to have my thoughts. I have to be like, hey, here's what I think. So I have to source everything that's going on in the news across all sections that are in there. And it's not just like politics. It's also science and tech and economics and sports, because I love sports. So it's everything. So I have to always kind of understand what's going on in the news landscape to decide how I'm going to curate it. Because I think that's why a lot of people buy in. It's how I see the world and what I'm curating, So I'm doing that every day. That is kind of what is keeping my mind sharp and why I have so much information in there all the time. But again, it's a rotating door.
But it's a very
right?
ballsy proposition. Like it's a ballsy venture to get into, because you're delivering news at a time where there's this Canadian censorship thing happening with this online news app.
Yeah.
The Bill C-18, is
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
And like you're taking on this venture where if you get to, is it $10 million in
Yeah.
revenue? That's when you have to register with the government, and they're going to have to like.
That'll never happen. So I won't. My business is offshore. So good luck figuring out where I make my money.
Okay.
Explain that.
It's
So
a
that's CRA listening.
It's a
is-
digital business,
Okay.
right? It's a digital business,
Yep.
and my head office is in the Cayman Islands. All my data, all my content comes out of the Cayman Islands. So everything comes from there. It's not even coming from Canada. It's running through Cayman. It's coming out of a Cayman IP address. So effectively,
how does
that's where
that
the
work
business exists.
But how does that work with the other? Because I try to follow these other Instagram pages who used to deliver news, Canadian news, but now have a message on there that says this content is no longer available to Canadian.
So you have to use a VPN if you want to get over that. So you can do that. So that's a bit of a different thing. So I'll go back to Blender. So Blender is like, yes, it's the newsletter. It's obviously a podcast that I've started doing recently with Liam DeBoer. He's been great. All the social channels. And then we're working towards kind of launching a website, which would then put us on the radar. So once you have a news website, then you're kind of on the radar. That's kind of the plan, and we're going to continue doing a lot more video content, op-eds, more like some Vice stuff, more documentary style, because I really just think we don't have enough of an independent voice in Canada and in the United States. So that's kind of the pull there. Now, with respect to what you were saying about not being able to see the news on social, so that's because of Bill C-18. So Meta has not made a deal with the government. Google did. They're going to pay them $100 million a year. So that's 75% of that is going to major news corporations. So CBC. I think what was the other one? CBC and Bell are the two big beneficiaries. They're the ones who are going to get the most money. Apparently, a third of it is going to CBC, which is preposterous. It's fucking wild. It's
crazy.
So, because Meta is not towing that line, they're not willing to, because it's a government shakedown. The Online News Act is a government shakedown saying you're using news content, but they're also using my content, right? So news channels get the same opportunity you and I get to put their news out there. Put their information out there, share whatever they want to share, except the government goes, well, you got to pay these guys for that. Fuck you. That doesn't make any sense. So it's just a shakedown to basically take money from these tech companies.
Well, it's money, but also I think it's a lot of control too, because I watch a lot of your videos and you do refer back to follow the money, but I think it's a little bit beyond that. I think it's not just money. You're talking about control too, because of TikTok. Like if you have TikTok, when you scroll through TikTok, there's a lot of raw videos. There's a lot of BS videos too. But it doesn't take much to see like raw footage from the Netherlands, like all these farmers protesting because like they're banning all these fertilizers. That's going to put them all out of it. But there's not a single peep about it here. Right. And this is major because there's a lot of stuff coming out of the Netherlands that you and I are consuming that nobody's talking about how this is going to react.
The downstream effects.
The downstream effect.
I agree.
But that's just one example. There's flooding around the world. Like crazy weather, like in India, this, that, and there's earthquakes, the stuff in Maui, like so many things that are happening that we just hear a very silent, like little peep about sometimes when they really can't avoid it. And I think what they're trying to do with this act, maybe I'm wrong, but my feeling is that they're trying to control also the news.
Yeah, I mean, so if you're talking about really control, I think you have to look at the bills in conjunction. Like you look at C-18, C-11, and C-36. So C-11 is the Online Streaming Act, C-18 is the Online News Act, C-36 is the Online Harms Bill or Online Hate Speech Bill. When you look at these all together, they're a censorship weapon, right? Because if you have the Online News Act saying you have to pay these media companies, and then you have to pay the media companies, and then the tech also has to pay into a fund, a Canadian fund, which makes state-controlled media. It's pretty wild, right? And then when you're a part of this Online News Act, they can sort of dictate where and when and what can go on your platform over time. So same thing with C-11. C-11 is sort of the same thing, where that's actually more control. C-11 is more about controlling what goes on your platform. C-18 is about paying the media companies. So, once you're registered, you can't really avoid one or the other, right? You're kind of in their hold. Now, the CRTC through C-11, they get to dictate what goes on your channel. Now, they say that they're not going to censor regular stuff, like, say, real estate videos, right? But I created this term called soft censorship. Because they're prioritizing Indigenous content, basically the DIE cult, like diversity, inclusion, equity, Indigenous stuff, they're prioritizing that content. So if they're not going to censor you, then how do they prioritize the other content? It's literally impossible, right? Because one has to go in front of the other. And I don't mean censor like I would get hard censored. They go, that guy's got to get off the fucking airwaves. We don't want to hear him talk. Cool, so I'm not allowed on. I get deplatformed. But you guys get replaced. That's what I think of as soft censorship. So that's all happening. So when you kind of look at these tools, then C-36, the problem with that is they get to dictate what is deemed hate speech.
But wait, does that bill?
No.
It didn't pass yet.
It's coming. They're bringing it back again. So it's either going to get introduced before Christmas or just after. Now, hard to say how long it takes to work its way through. But the problem you have with that is it's not just about hate speech. It's
what they determine as hate speech.
And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why that's a problem. So we've started decriminalizing denialism, right? So in Canada, we've criminalized the denying the Holocaust. We know the Holocaust happened and it was atrocious, right? But by criminalizing denialism on this issue, what you're effectively saying is it's criminal to hold a different opinion about history, to hold a different view. That's the crime. That's very dangerous. So now we're doing it again with residential schools. They're considering criminalizing it. This is because, and they say they're doing it because, well, it harms the survivors if you deny that it happened. Bro, you get made fun of if you're short. So do I. The world can be harsh. Who gives a fuck? Deal with it. But they're saying, well, no, we have to save these people. They need it. It's not
that would be great. Maybe I can get people to to be, you know, it would be a crime if you deny that I'm hurt because I'm short.
There you go. Well, the thing is, that's where it's going, and that's the problem. So when you criminalize denialism, and then just to kind of bring it back to just kind of circle everything back to this hate speech thing, what you're saying is the government gets to decide what's the truth, and if you think anything otherwise, it's criminal. So where does this go next? Does it go to disagreeing with the government? Does it go to saying there's only two genders? Does it go to what is now criminal? Who else are we harming? All these marginalized groups. Everyone's marginalized now. You know what I mean? So when you start doing that, you jump off of you slide down a very slippery slope is kind of what I'm getting at. You know what I mean? Is you get to a point where you're allowing, you know, the government to dictate what the truth is, and then you're criminalizing someone else thinking it. And then when you take that and you put that on social media, now they're going to go to these companies. They're going to go, here's how we feel about this issue. If anybody says anything about denying the Holocaust or denying, you know, residential schools or denying this gender issue, that content already gets canceled before it even goes up. They're already deplatformed. So they're using sort of a proactive censor with this. And that's kind of your issue now. So when you look at C18, the tech companies are paying the media companies to survive. You look at C11, the government's controlling what these media companies can put out, what the tech companies can now put out. And with this online hate speech bill, they're putting a proactive censor on content, so this stuff doesn't even get out for half a minute. It's already gone. That's the weapon that's coming to Canada.
True. Yeah, and earlier on during COVID, I remember, because my office is at Bayview and Shepherd. It's a very multicultural area.
Yep, I know
There's
it.
a lot of Persians, Asians, Chinese. And I remember seeing convoys of cars with signs on it being something along the line. I made a video, like I quickly grabbed a video of it, but I couldn't find it. I was trying to find it to bring it up. But it was like, we left communism and we don't want it here, something like that. And it was very shocking to me, because this was earlier in the stages of COVID where we still didn't know what was what. I don't think the vaccine was out yet.
Right.
And these guys were already protesting, and I was like, where do they, and I took a video, I'm like, where do they get this? What's communism? What's coming? What are they talking about communism? But the more time is passing and the more I see like the bills on like trying to, freedom of speech, like all the stuff that's coming down, I'm sure you've heard of the World Economic Forum and their pull on Justin Trudeau.
Of course.
And in fact, like a lot of people hate Trudeau directly, but I just think he's a puppet. He's a puppet for the World Economic Forum. They've already said it on stage. Klaus Schwab is bragging about how he's part of his Young Leaders program.
Right.
And he's infiltrated his cabinet. And you could see a lot of the orders and stuff that's coming down. When you trace it back, it matches with the Agenda 2030 that the World Economic Forum has put in place.
Yep.
So it kind of makes you feel like Canada as a whole is like the testing ground for this new one world government. And some of the stuff that we're seeing now is going in that direction. And it kind of coincides. And you're like, okay, so Trudeau's just a puppet. You can hate him as much as you want, but there's a control from up here. I want to hear your thoughts on that too. Like, because as soon as I said World Economic Forum, you had a smirk there. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about how that influenced, because I don't necessarily see you speaking about that. And I think that's the main driving factor.
I guess because I talk about it just a little bit, and the reality is it's more of a global issue, but it's more of like this. It's not as concrete. And what I mean by that is there's not, like, obviously we know that the World Economic Forum exists. We know that Klaus Schwab has written the Great Reset. We know a lot of stuff that this guy says, right? But you don't actually see a lot of policy affected from there specifically. Like, you see little things. It's kind of like the UN as well, right? So the UN is like it's basically a hall monitor. No one really gives a fuck about the UN, but they pass a lot of things that go through there, and then countries kind of go back to their own house, and then they use their policy and their legislation to implement a new set of rules, right? The WEF is the same. So the WEF doesn't have this. They don't take action in the sense that they are affecting policy
Directly.
Yes, and it's happening here based on their direction, right? So for you and I to sort of fight this, the first person we have to go through is our own government, and that's why I don't spend a lot of time on it.
Well, you're right, but I also think that this is what I really like about you, is that you're a factual guy, and I think this is the reason why you've built such a big following so fast, is because you're not just talking, like earlier you mentioned Alex Jones.
Yeah.
Like, he's very conspiracy theory.
He's right a lot, but he's full of shit sometimes
he might be
too.
right now. Like, a lot of people went back and
Yeah.
were like, oh shoot, some of the stuff he talked about like back then turned out to be real.
Yeah.
But we need someone like you to bring things that are facts, because people are arguing with you are going to want facts.
Right, of
And you
course.
speak of things that are, that you could refer back to and say,
Yeah.
this is the reason, so and so. The World Economic Forum is right there in between, where I ask a lot of my clients, and some of my clients are like well-to-do people, like VP at the banks and this. And I'm like, do you know anything about World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab? I'm like, no, never heard of it.
Yeah.
And I think they have a lot more influence on our government and the way that Canadians live, more than people would even know. And they do meet annually.
Right.
And-
they
and-
do. Yeah. In Davos, right? In Switzerland.
Yeah, exactly.
So there are some things there was some information recently that came out about the amount of money we've spent on World Economic Forum policy. It was pretty nominal, honestly. Like it was in the low millions. Like I want to say 20, 30 million. It wasn't much. A lot of the policies failed. A lot of them were WEF ideas that we put money into that didn't come to fruition. So we just kind of burned the money, which, I mean, government loves to do that anyway. So I did kind of look at it, but you don't see the direct link other than the rhetoric really as much. You know what I mean? Like there are some WEF combined policies, but again, they just don't account for much. So it's a little bit hard. Like it's kind of like a war on drugs in a sense. And what I mean by that is you can't win that war and you don't know where to fire your bullets.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the same thing with the WEF. Is it's like it's this idea that everybody participates in, but it's so nebulous that you don't really know how to attack it, other than just to sort of identify it and kind of highlight the things they say. But then again, you don't see that maybe coming into effect via policy, right? Like Trudeau will get out there and bitch about free speech, then put in these 3 bills. So now that's like objective, right? But with these other guys, it's how the information translates and how it gets here from maybe these organizations with the World Economic Forum is just not very clear. So when you're doing what I do and you're trying to identify a problem, and really for me, I want people to have a better life. I want people to live longer, be healthier. I want them to love their country again. Like I want all these things to happen. And my dad made a good point. He's like, don't just complain to complain, give people solutions. So if you watch a lot of my videos, I always try to give people solutions in those videos. And when you complain about the World Economic Forum, what is the solution? Effectively. And the answer is going to be, there isn't really any.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of another reason why I just kind of stay out of it. Like, I know it's there and I'll talk about it and I do understand it and I'm happy to participate in the conversation. But in terms of sort of highlighting the problem that we could solve today, I'm just not sure there's much there.
I think the first step to a solution is being aware. Because a lot of people have no clue that at least they should be aware that the World Economic Forum has a bit of influence on our government.
Sure,
I mean,
sure,
Klaus
but
Schwab is bragging openly about it.
I agree. But the thing is, you need to show me in what way. So if this is what I would want. If I were watching a video that I was putting out and you said the World Economic Forum is dramatically affecting our political system in Canada. Okay, great. How?
I would say that I don't need to see. This is the thing we don't need concrete proof.
You do.
To have
Because you're not going to get
suspicious.
people to buy in if you don't have proof. You want to make people aware, but you don't want to be the guy wearing the tinfoil hat with the fucking strap on. So you want to make sure that you're basically giving people facts to convince them to see it your way. That's why what worked well for me for COVID is people wanted to agree with the government and they made their opinions and had their views and they wanted to live there. But if you watch my videos, try to argue with one. It's very hard. So you kind of go, maybe this guy's got a point, because you have a reasonable amount of facts to convince people that they should change their opinion, because it's very, very hard to get people to change their opinions. So if you introduce this one world government, which already sounds like a conspiracy to people, if you introduce this one world government idea that all these people go meet at and it's this secret thing and this and this and this and it's affecting Canadian policy, they'll go, you need to show me how. And if you show me how it's affecting me negatively, I'm on board. Let's change it. But if you can't,
The
then you're
direct
just-
correlation is a little bit harder to prove, but
Right.
it's no longer a secret, because you could see on YouTube, there's videos
Right.
of them sitting around and they're talking about
Yeah,
policy.
I agree.
And
I
I
agree.
even have his book. I haven't read it yet, but
It's terrible. It's so poorly
read it?
written. I don't think anybody
the
edited
fourth
it.
Industrial Revolution.
No,
is that
I
what
was
it
the Great Reset.
Great
It's
Reset.
such a clusterfuck.
Who wrote that?
Klaus
Klaus
Schwab.
Schwab.
Oh.
Yeah. So he's an economist from Germany, I think. And he started the World Economic Forum back in the 70s.
Yeah, long time ago.
And it was to be, I guess, on top of world issues and stuff like that, and making but a lot of their plans are like for COVID, for example. They have a whole map on their website. I don't know if you've spent some time on their website.
A little bit, not much though.
Yeah, like they talk about COVID and procedures and digital ID and digital currency.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the stuff, obviously they have policies written professionally written and
Yeah.
mapped out for somebody to kind of.
But
to
the problem is they don't have bills that pass, right? So
No.
at least if you go to the UN, so the UN has passed something, resolutions and all this stuff, right? So the UN recently passed something on disinformation that was championed by Canada, Melanie Joly and someone from the Netherlands. And what this basically said was, hey, we're going to go fight disinformation worldwide. Now, disinformation is a bullshit term, right? Basically, it says what I say is true and what you say is false.
Yeah,
Basically,
who chooses what's
yeah, it's like
disinformation,
you're the ultimate king of truth. Like fuck off, the whole thing's stupid. But anyway, they weaponized this term, and they need to because it's something they need to fight. So when they have a resolution in the UN and they sign these bills. I think 35 countries have signed it. So at least in the UN, you see something, a document that is live that explains the plan. Now you can go and be mad at the UN, but what that is those are marching orders for those countries. For Canada to come back here and implement the C-suite bills that we're talking about, right? And all the other countries basically agreed to do the same. That's what they agreed to when they signed this at the UN. But they're not doing that at the World Economic Forum. They're going, yeah, okay, cool, we're on board, but we're not seeing any physical bills, or you are seeing the things on their website, but no one's outright agreeing and signing them. If they did, then they'd become like this pseudo one world government nobody wants. So they have to sort of live in this space where they are still a bit of a conspiracy theory. I know that they're not. I can't think of a better way to describe it, but they don't actually get to implement anything on paper. And no one agrees to it. Right. Now, yet is a good point. But here's the thing. When you get to the point of yet, how do you implement the structure for the World Economic Forum like you do the UN? How do you become a member? How is that monitored? What is the system in place? See, none of that exists, right? People go to the World Economic Forum. Like, I think Pierre Poilievre has been a couple times, but he's like, no, I'm out. I'm done. I don't want to deal with this anymore. You get a lot of people that go to it, and then they don't go again. So they're like, well, are you a member? Are you not a member? Is it official? Is it unofficial? How did you feel about it? Well, you don't want to go this year. Oh, there's too much of a spotlight on it, so you're not going to go this year. Oh, okay. So it's kind of this club that is a little more transient, not quite as fixed as something like the UN. So when I think about, giving these guys shit, I go, well, they don't really have their shit together in the sense that I can kind of shoot an arrow at them and be like, they're the problem, let's fix it, right?
And I appreciate the fact that you seem concerned and you want to educate people, give them solutions. I feel like that has to do a little bit about you becoming a new father, right? You're going to have a baby soon?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'm really excited about that, actually.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How soon?
Yeah.
June.
June, okay. Do you know what date did they?
No, it's early June.
Early June?
Early
okay.
June.
I have a
Okay.
June baby too.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like I have one for every month.
Yeah, I mean,
Every
you're
other
halfway
month.
there.
Yeah, halfway.
for the whole annual.
It's wild, dude.
Yeah, I have one for every season. Yeah, we have 2 birthdays per season. So,
I'm really excited to be a dad. Yeah, I've wanted to be a father for a lot of years. Really, really looking forward to it.
were you guys trying or
No,
something?
no. We were just, so we've been together, like I said, my wife and I have been together forever. But we never had any surprises. So we were like sort of methodical in our approach. And we were actually going to before COVID, and then shit hit the fan. So we pressed pause, and then we're kind of like, okay, let's see where the chips fall here. And now we're like, all right, well, things are where they are. Let's go. We're kind of running out of time too. I'm getting a little older. So
Yeah, but
No gender yet?
no.
Okay.
No.
Do you
want to
know or
soon?
no?
100%. Immediately.
You
Yeah.
want to know?
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
I don't like surprises.
Yeah.
Not my thing.
wait, so this is early. This information we have is super early because
Yeah.
June. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you surprised that we know?
Not really, because I'm not really super secretive about it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Are you gonna do a huge gender reveal with like?
No, that's
Okay.
so ridiculous.
Did you see that gender reveal
How
when
many
the
have you
airplane
done?
crashes? Oh,
Yeah, dude died. Great. Someone can be like, what are we
Yeah.
doing
Did
here?
you-
man?
Come
Did you see
on,
that
no.
video?
Yeah, dude.
So
Yeah,
there's an airplane that flies over the couple and lets out the pink like dust, and they're all like, "Yeah!" Then you can see immediately after that the wing falls off, and he's like, "Boom!"
Boom, dude.
Like someone records it and comes back to the couple like, "Yeah!" It's like they're getting ridiculous out of hand. Like, see, I lived in Europe for a bit,
Right.
and we went to a wedding in Europe, and it was like
Right.
the weddings in Europe are like done at a restaurant.
Yeah.
It's at night, people dance, and that's it. You come here, it's like $100,000 wedding. You got the gender reveal. You've got before that you have like the showers, all the bride stuff, the Jack and Jills, the bachelor party.
It's way too much.
It's so much. It drains you
100%.
before you even like once you're married, you're piss poor. You have nothing left.
Yeah.
But see, tonight I was gonna bring you one of my kids, like one of the models,
Oh, yeah.
and we wanted to see you change a pamper, just like kind of get to get you out of that serious mode.
I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I haven't changed a diaper yet.
I know you haven't.
So here's the thing. I got to watch a YouTube video on it first. That's the truth. I have
no,
to. So I was talking to my buddy the other day. I was talking to Danny the other day. I was at the Christmas party with Matt and Danny Ablicon.
Yeah.
So they were. I was talking to Danny because we were just talking about having kids, and he's like, "Yeah, so the hospitals here were so fucked up. So my wife's gonna do probably. She has a midwife, probably do a home birth, just kind of the way we see the world, and
Cool.
we just think that a lot of the current medical system is totally fucked.
But just be ready in case.
Yeah. Well, so I'm gonna watch YouTube videos. Like I'm gonna figure this out. Danny goes, when I was there, he's like, they were so busy. They're like, you can't have your baby yet. She's like, well, the baby's ready to go. And so she had to sort of stave it off as long as she could. They deliver the baby. And then the nurse is like, you got to change the diaper. Danny's like, I don't know how to fucking change the diaper.
Damn, what hospital is this?
Yeah, dude, I don't know. You'd have to ask him. But I was like, oh, that's horrifying. He's like, this is not like, he's like, look, just prepare yourself to have to deal with something like that, because he goes like, this is not something I was really ready to deal with. You know what I mean? So,
Well, you know what? I think it never goes as planned. Okay.
Right.
Sometimes you want to have a midwife. We know people that.
You guys
have
want me to change a doll on air?
Yeah.
Yeah, bruv. I'm gonna huck that at one of you. I might pop its head off and huck some at both of you.
Really?
Yeah.
100%. And I got a fucking arm.
You really don't want to do this?
I mean, I don't really care.
I think it would be
I
great.
think it's good practice.
I think it's great practice. You know what's
I think
what's
it's
the
good
best
to get your
practice?
feet wet.
But then thank God I didn't bring a real baby, because then seeing my baby fly across the room would be a little
No, that's totally different. I've never heard a kid.
Yeah. Can we do a little timer thing? Because this is great. Because you're just telling us about a story about how the hospital just throws it at you, and let's just pretend that things have gone crazy. You have to
No
show up to the
time.
hospital. You got no time.
First, I got to look at the diaper first. That's my first thing would be like, what's going on with the diaper? It's about kind of understanding it, just like the mechanism.
It's your first time looking at one?
I can
Yeah, as far as I know.
I can
Okay.
already tell you are a very precise person.
Yeah,
He came in here. He sat there and he's like, guys, it's bothering me that the paintings are not in line on the wall.
bro.
Right?
Yeah, you know what the thing too is? We're probably gonna use cloth diapers. That's just like a Meg thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
What material is this?
So this is like a manufactured diaper. The cloth diaper is like the old school way. Some people say that there's chemicals within this pamper that's slowly leaching onto the body of the kid. Like there's a lot of talk about that. We don't know. I mean, it's not, obviously not.
Yo, bro, this got a front and a back. What's going on here?
Yeah, it's got a front and back. So let us put a quick little timer. Let's cut the tension of all this political talk with a little game of.
To be honest with you, I like political talk.
Well, you deal with a lot of shit, and you're gonna have to deal with literal shit
Dan.
soon. Next.
Dan, is it
True.
disconnected? Is it still good? Okay.
What's that? We all right?
So do you mind?
No, not really. I'm
Oh.
still trying to figure out which is the front and the back.
My
But I mean, I'll
Wi-Fi.
figure it out.
So here's
all right.
We're gonna time and see how long it takes you, and then maybe I'll inspect it and I'll clean it up for you. How's that? Okay. So let's do the stopwatch, and go.
Is this too big for this baby?
It's a little bit. It's a little bit big. It's a little bit big.
It's too big,
Yeah.
man.
You want to put it on me instead?
It's a small baby.
So here we go. So we've got Jonathan Harvey. He's going to be a father soon. We're putting him to the test. And you know what? If he passes this test, then he can. Oh, look at that. He's doing a great job, actually.
I'm just the baby crying.
That's a fan.
'cause
But now, if you had a
more
live
realistic.
baby, he'd be. I've had one of my babies pee on me. Good job. Congratulations. Less than 30 seconds.
While talking shit.
While talking shit, cleaning shit. I think you're ready as a father. You know
Yeah.
what?
Let's go.
You would make one of those great fathers who is constantly teaching their kid.
Yeah, I really look forward to that, actually.
Yeah,
for
probably
sure.
annoy the kid when they're like 8, 10 years old.
You know, it'd be interesting to see what our kids like. Megan and I are very similar. So my wife and I we're like, she's more left brain, I'm more right brain, but like it's weird because we have our level of intelligence, I would say, is pretty much a par. Our communication skills are pretty much the same. We see almost every major issue the exact same way. We both had good upbringings too, but we both identify things that we want to make sure we teach our kids at a young age. So it'd be really interesting. Like we were also both pretty quick studies as kids. Like weren't really challenged with school. Talking at a pretty young age. So I'm looking forward to it. But I expect that I'm probably gonna have like a kid that is as interested in learning as I am in teaching. And maybe not. You just kind of you go with the flow. I understand that. But I look forward to sort of giving them the leg up that I didn't have. Like, I want my kids to know the stuff that helped me in my mid-20s when they're in their early teens, because it's such a huge benefit if you can kind of explain and give those people those tools. And like I said, my upbringing was great, my family was great, parents are great, loved it. It's just my parents had us when they were still figuring themselves out, you know. And while we always are, I mean, I'm going to be about 10 years older than my dad than when he had me, right? So you're just at a bit of a different place.
For
so
sure.
I look forward to sort of having that relationship, you know.
Awesome.
What are the top things? Because this is interesting. Because before you become a father,
Yeah.
and then after you become a father, things change a little bit.
For sure.
Because you go in with an idea that like, oh, I'm going to do this, but then you realize when the kids come out, and it's actually easier when you have many kids. Because then the first one, you're like, well, why is
Dude's a
my kid
baby
not
pusher.
walking yet?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you start judging him and comparing him to everybody or
Right.
her. But as we had the second and the third and the fourth, and we're
Yeah.
like, oh, they're all different.
Yes.
And some may speak earlier, but then not walk. And then the other ones may walk faster and whatever. So what do you think are the top 3 things that are going to be the most important things to focus on? So I always told my wife, so for example, for us, I'm like, listen, people are like, how can you have so many kids? Because it's so expensive. I'm like, listen, we grew up very humble. We didn't have much. Family of 6. Look at me. I turned out decent.
Yep.
I never did the extracurricular activities because couldn't afford it. We didn't do vacations, things like that. We went country to country. And I told my wife, I'm like, the only thing that the kids really need is love and attention. That's the base of it.
I agree, because they only have one experience. They have nothing to reference against. I totally agree. Yeah.
So what are the top 3 things that I'm sure as the person that you are,
Yeah.
you've already made a list. You probably have it on your phone.
I do have a list of things I want to teach my kids. For sure.
Yeah, I knew it.
But that's been ongoing I've had that list going for like 15 years.
Oh, there
Okay.
you go.
Yeah.
You're prepared for this question then. Let's hear what are the top 3 on that list
Top 3 things that you
that you want to teach your kids that you're going to focus on. Because your kid is a brand new computer without any software on it.
I think it's
You're
interesting,
writing
right? Like the challenge with that is what becomes most important in life is constantly changing. What was most important in life 10 years ago is not what it is today.
Very smart.
So what I would suggest right now, some key things, I would focus on self-awareness, you know. I think I want them to realize what they're capable of and what they're not, and, you know, what they like and what they don't, and to listen to themselves internally. I think that's really important. I think a lot of times we push things on kids, and society does, but I want them to kind of understand what works for them and what doesn't. The other thing too, like, I want them to realize, and this is actually a key, that you are ultimately responsible for everything in your life, whether good or bad.
Yes.
Because you can always do something else to change your circumstance. And the way I kind of look at this is like, you get to, like, your life is a book. Everyone's writing it or reading it. And you either get to be the author in your life of success and happiness, or the reader in your life of suspense and whatever the hell else happens. So you don't want to be the reader, you want to be the writer, because it's going to happen anyway. So I want them to kind of understand that. I would say those are 2 really, really big things. And then, like, you know, the third one more than anything is I just want them to know love and joy and try not to lose touch with that. And I'll tell you why, because as you get older, you lose touch with how to be happy. You do. You lose touch with what makes you happy and how to have fun. You lose touch with kind of the just joy in the world. You do. The world is hard and can wear you down. And I think that trying to remind them constantly to make time and to make room for that will give them an advantage as they get older, because it seems that it's this sliding scale. You know, when you're a kid and your imagination is wild and the whole world is an adventure. And then you get to this point where you're in your 30s or 40s and you fucking hate everything. I personally don't, but I see it a lot. I have a little trouble sort of enjoying things sometimes because I have such a narrow focus on what I'm trying to accomplish all the time. That's my own crux. That's my own issue. I think some of my self-worth is based in my own success. So, you know, but that's how I'm wired. So it's okay. But I want them to know, like, you know, most people sort of lose touch with how to be happy and how to enjoy life. And I know that I can't force them to be that way. I can't force them to do anything. But I want to constantly remind them of that, because it's kind of what makes life worth living in a lot of ways.
And I have good news for you, because, you know, exactly what you said is very true. You start with this imagination full of love, full of joy, almost innocent, because you don't have any of these ideologies embedded in you.
Right.
It's usually through the parents or through the schooling system, or when you go to school and they start bringing out these concepts of like gender and you feel like someone else, and like the kids don't know. Like, I have 5 kids. I see how their brain works. I've got them at different ages, from 1.5 all the way to 8 years old. They're not thinking of those things, dude.
No.
They're really not. And if they are, they're not thinking about it. They're curious.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
Like,
they're just willing to pull the thread. They
They
haven't knit
want
the
to
sweater
pull the
yet.
thread, but they're
Yeah.
the same way they're curious about the electricity plug on the wall.
Yeah.
You know, we're not going to say, "Oh, you touched that. Now you're going to want to, you want to electrocute yourself. Here you go."
Right.
Give the kid the chance to explore, and then once they get to a mature age where they're allowed to get their own tattoos, let them make that decision.
For sure.
Right? But I think what you're in for is that when you have your child, and the first 6 months to a year, it's mostly they want to be with their mom,
Yeah.
breastfeeding or
It's
whatever.
just a shitting and sleeping machine.
Exactly.
It's fine.
Yeah, which is I also never understood. See, like the reason me and my wife work so well is like she never woke me up at night to be like, "Hey, baby's crying, let her turn." She's an angel, but she understood that like she let me do my work.
Yeah.
And I did what I needed to do, do my work, whatever business. But then she also took care of the kid. But once the kid got old enough, around 8 months, a year,
Yeah.
I started getting involved.
Right.
That's where Papa Time comes in. But they bring out the imagination.
Right.
They bring out the joy and the innocence back from you.
Yeah, I look forward to that actually.
Yeah, that's the
one of
best
big,
part.
Like, you guys think I love Christmas now? Wait till my kids are ready for
Oh,
it. I know,
dude, it's the best.
I know. I look
Yeah.
really looking forward to that.
I gotta show you guys a picture. I was just showing somebody. We put the elf on the shelf.
Nice.
And every morning they wake up and they all
Where is it? Yeah.
like it's like 0 to 100
Yeah.
from the bed. And they're like, "Where's Chippy?" Because they've named him Chippy. And they'll find Chippy and be like, jump around the tree. This morning I was in the tree and he's like, take a picture. So I took a picture of them. And they're all like, rascals around the thing.
That's
But-
amazing. See, I look forward to that. Like, that brings you a lot of joy, I can tell.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing and a bad thing. So before I was very, business focused. Like I want to strive and I want to do best and I want to make more money. Ever since I started having more kids, that's kind of like I do need a good amount of money to set up these kids for their
For sure.
future. But I also don't want to burn myself out and like kill my time outside of the house.
Right.
I want to utilize whatever I can with the family as well.
Yeah, and
So-
I think like I'm working towards that as well, and that's why we didn't really have kids when we were young, because we were very focused on building businesses. That's one of the reasons why I get a little frustrated with the Canadian government, is because we had built a really good business that afforded us a lot of time, and that got taken away. So we had to rebuild, which is fine. What I realized is you can do it 10 times faster the second time, so it's okay.
But is that where the content started?
Yeah, a lot of the content. So funny enough, like I was doing content for years. I think I did my first off-the-cuff video in 2016. And I had like 15,000 followers or so before COVID.
What were you talking about? Was it ranting?
Mainly entrepreneur stuff, business stuff, things I was learning, things I was teaching other people. Just trying to be the person I needed when I was younger that I didn't have. So I was like, here's the information I learned today. Here's how it's helpful, right? So it'd always be relevant and, just sort of what I was going through. But it was good value and sort of the same way I deliver now. But it really was off the cuff. But now, obviously things grew and, we do all the social stuff and it became about COVID and off the cuff became written and all these other things. And I think my social following, I think it's around 130 or so on everything. But that's still very small in terms of like making it its own ecosystem. It's still pretty small. But that's kind of what spawned the news. So I'm grateful for that. That really is what pushed me towards Blender more than anything. And hopefully, by the time my kids are hopefully going to have 2 kids, and by the time they're old enough, where they, I'll be around all the time. I really look forward to it. But by the time they're old enough to need my actual attention in terms of their growth and development, I'm hopeful that I'm available at least half the time. You know what I mean? Like just sort of to your point about being like zeroed in on your growth in your business. Like I love to work. I work every day. I like what I do. But I'm going to work 30, 35 hours a week when I have kids, not 70, 75. It's not going to happen. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, I see where you're at, but I'm planning for it, if that makes sense.
I mean, we live in a time where, Matt can also attest to this, but it's much easier to run a business nowadays. Like when I started 15, 16 years ago, we had to drive all the way for one initial.
Oh, yeah. Fuck.
And every time you'd show up to a client's house, it was like, well, why don't you stay? You drove all the way here. Let's
Grab
sit
a
down.
coffee,
have a
have a
coffee."
muffin,
Full-blown
whatever, yeah.
commitment. Yeah.
It took like 2 hours to
Right.
get initial. Now it's like, hey, I'm sending you DocuSign and like, I've got the kids here.
Yeah.
Send it. Or like, you call someone, do a thing.
Yeah.
It's done, right? Like,
Yeah, I just tried the work remote thing. It's great.
Yeah.
Still doing deals.
Yeah. It's nice, right?
know?
Oh, yeah, you
Yeah.
were in Mexico, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good for you. Yeah.
even right before this this podcast, he got an offer. I got my offer accepted like Like
Yep.
we don't have to physically.
No,
Yeah.
it's nice. And I think that's one of the things that we wanted to get away from. With one of the big reasons why we got out of the restaurant business was because it's geographically specific, right? So we weren't really sure if we were going to live in Canada. Now we're going to stay here for a few years with kids and stuff. But we wanted to build businesses that it didn't matter where we were, which is why, our business is stationed in the Cayman Islands with the news. And, anything else we do, we're not going to be brick and mortar people anymore because you got to stay somewhere, right? And but it demands more of your time because you have to be open. And there's no technology there's technology that can improve the situation, but not the fact that you have to be open. That's right. And it's just, so for us, we're just kind of working away from that. And that's why, like I said, with the news, I can be anywhere. Digital business, we're good, right? So there's obviously some other things that we're doing and working on. But that hopefully will be the primary,
And speaking on tech, I wanted to get your opinion on something, a video.
Sure.
Show you another video here. Down the TikTok. So, and we'll kind of end it off with on this note too. Essentially.
I don't want to end it yet. I got so much more I want to talk to him about.
1 second.
Oh yeah, that one's good.
So. Oh. Okay.
We've got a special guest here, Fly.
Essentially saying AI will just take over the job of a realtor.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing.
Tell us your unfiltered,
Don't.
completely
You're not going to
open.
offend realtors.
You're not going to offend us.
The reality is realtors and car salesmen aren't as necessary as you might think because people only buy homes when they need them and only sell homes when they need them. All you're doing is steering them in the right direction.
Yeah.
Same thing with a car. You go in and buy a car when you need one and you sell one when you don't need one. It's pretty basic, I understand that there are systems in place that you guys can implement to make people's lives easier and to negotiate for them and stuff like that. But yeah, realistically, you're a liaison to someone trying to do something they already wanted to do.
I want to give an answer to that.
So using AI for that tool for people to save money, I could totally see it. I don't think it'll happen within the generation that we live in because people like human connection and they want to trust you. And people are way too emotional about their homes, way too emotional. So they don't want to necessarily give that responsibility to a robot. But the reality is, yeah, I could totally see it happening over in the coming years, especially with stuff like new condo builds and shit. You know what I mean? I could totally see it. People try to make more money, especially when it's hard to make money on homes. I get it, not to take anything away from what you guys do, but that's just kind of.
You're essentially in certain ways. So just to tell the public who always leaves fucked up comments on TikTok being like, realtors are useless. First of all, there are 80,000 realtors, and yes, there's a lot of them that are part-time or don't even do it.
Yeah, well, how many are fully active? 10%?
Yeah, maybe less even. Fully active to the point where they're making a living out of it. They don't have to rely on anything else. It's probably 5%.
5%. Yeah, there you go.
But this is the thing. So the 95% gives a bad reputation to the 5% because they come in without any clue. They'll do one transaction for their aunt and they'll butcher it. And the aunt's like, I could have done a better job. For the 5% though, who in the world, all the sales jobs are some of the highest paid jobs.
For sure.
Like guys who sell Boeing jets.
Yep.
You don't hear about those guys. And no one hates on them because it's not in the public's eye. Real estate agents and car salesmen, real estate agents even more, you could see exactly how much they're getting paid on every transaction. So the focus is on the commission, which becomes an issue.
Of course,
because
especially
people
as housing prices go up. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Now, the one thing is realtors don't get paid until you have a successful sale. We don't get a salary. There's all the back end stuff, the assistants.
Your admins, your marketing, of course.
Marketing,
Yeah, just cost you eat.
videos, whatever. Put all that stuff aside. AI could provide you with a lot of information, which they're doing today. They're giving you stats on the house, the area, the demographic, whatever. But AI is not in and out of those homes on a daily basis. AI is not talking to sellers and buyers and understanding where the market's at. When we're dealing with listings and we're I can almost sense it, and Matt can too. We just talked about it today. We're like, market's picking up already. I'm getting this many calls. I'm getting inquiries. I'm getting buyers that are coming back on the thing. This information is at the tip of our fingers, and we can immediately translate. If an offer comes into our listing, we know how to negotiate that based on the homes that we saw in that area, because AI will look at something and say, okay, this one was 2,000 square feet, same square feet as yours, but that one sold for 700,000. You should be worth 700,000 too. But it doesn't understand that the renovations on that one was really shoddy. It wasn't well done. In the pictures, it may look good, but you look at the details, things are badly put.
Pictures are deceiving.
Or you don't know the motivation of that seller during that time. Why did they undersell? They were desperate. AI doesn't calculate for these things, and I think it doesn't have the advantage a human does, who truly understands the market, who truly understands the product. So it's just like you go to someone to buy a private jet or you buy a car, there are always the salesmen that just throw it at you, and sometimes things stick because the market's hot. But when the market slows down, like we slowed down recently,
This market would be hard.
it's hard because a lot of these realtors are like, what are we doing? So I had realtors like, I have a listing in a condo and a bunch of other listings in that condo, and the realtors are emailing each other, including me. They're like, we're not getting no traffic. Let's do a collective open house and give wine and cheese. I'm like, that's not going to work. Like, you're going to bring a lot of people from the building who just want to eat your wine and cheese 100%. And be like, great unit. Thanks, guys. Bye.
They do. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. So people get desperate, but they have to find creative ways on how to move products. So I think there's going to be a hybrid system where, yeah, AI is going to complement it.
Right.
But just like any other job, like pharmacy, I could see a pharmacist getting eliminated. Amazon will fulfill your prescriptions, or even a doctor, because people are like, oh, if you're a doctor or a lawyer, you're not going to get replaced. I'm like, those are some of the first jobs to get
lawyers
replaced.
You could already replace a lot of them with the AI. I mean,
AI.
Just they have the judicial system that maybe you'd need a representative, but like you can represent yourself. Anyway, effectively.
But the issue is the point is, like, if you're talking about realtors or salesmen getting replaced, I think at that point most jobs have been replaced as well.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think, like, to be honest with you, I think that most real estate agents aren't really worth, the papers that they sign for. 95% of them aren't worth it. You know what I mean? It's just not worth it. Like you said, the guy that does one transaction for his anti-year and kind of fucks things up. Like, if you're dialed in and you're selling your home, most people are pretty focused on what they're trying to accomplish, especially when it's their largest asset for most people. So that process for them, they're usually, they know more than a lot of these half-assed realtors, right? So I just think even before AI, I think the majority of them are unnecessary. That's actually what I think.
Yeah.
Right? I think there's good people at their job, but it's the same thing as a car salesman. Like, you go in to buy a car, you needed one. You need to go buy a home. You're not increasing home sales by being a realtor.
Yeah.
Really, you're not. You might move things along a little quicker and find someone a nicer home that they want to be in and maybe save them a few bucks. I'll give you that. But like, someone had to be in the market that wanted to buy. Someone had to be in the market that wanted to sell. So that's why I think a lot of it is unnecessary to begin with. In terms of replacing it with AI, it'll just be a helping tool for a long time, because AI is way off doing like general intelligence and like anything like that is so far away. So I agree. Like, I mean, sales, yeah, they're going to be. Sales are nuanced and based on charm and relationships, right? So those are definitely going to be some of the last things to go with AI for sure. And maybe not even completely. Maybe they'll still stick around. But that doesn't mean, like I said,
I feel like AI would have a tough time being like, when I have a buyer walk into my listing and they're like, such and such home down the street sold for X. We want to get the same price, if not less, because we heard the market's slower.
Right.
But AI wouldn't be like, hey, did you know that this home, although it's down the street, it's not as close to the main street? Or did you, by living here, you will have an elevator, for example, or you have access. We build an image in the buyer's mind.
Right.
We learn what the buyer is motivated by, and we build that image. So that conversation, because we have these conversations on a daily basis, we know where the pressure points are, the buyers that are walking through a listing, and we push it. And I've seen the results, like after 16 years of having these conversations, you start to see the results of finding where the motivation is and putting pressure on there. And sometimes you realize, oh, wow, I just pushed this guy up another 50, 100,000 where they wouldn't have if I didn't apply these pressures.
Right.
So this is where I think AI would eventually learn and mimic
for sure.
Whatever.
That's the thing.
I think maybe on the buy side it might be easy, but not on the listing side.
Listing side, there's
Listing
too
side
many
would be
moving
incredibly
parts
hard.
when it comes to, because a car salesman is different. You're representing just one make
It's
of a car.
pretty simple, yeah.
Yeah. With a home, the product's always different. Even in a subdivision where they're like cookie cutter, it's always different because you have a different seller, you have a different motivation,
Different
you have
streets.
different street, different timing. So there's so many moving factors that you got to be quick on. And
Yeah, I
witty.
don't think AI is going to replace you guys, to be honest with you.
Not yet.
No, I don't. I think it's going to be a while, because it just doesn't really make a lot of sense because there's not really a lot of, like, the reality is there's not a lot of function in it. There really isn't, right? There's not it's more nuanced. It's more understanding the individuals. It's more, just kind of being motivated and
It's a lot of conversations.
Yeah, it really is. It is more about like, it is actually based more on human communication than it is about factual information.
100%.
Those are going to be, I think that's the disparity that we're looking at.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you guys are safe that way.
Thank you.
There'll be useful tools for you for sure.
Yes.
But
Jonathan Harvey approved.
We're good.
So before we wrap things up, I
Yeah.
want to hear a little bit about, because obviously you're a smart dude. So tell us when it comes to real estate,
yeah.
what is your strategy as far as like, forget about what you currently own. I don't want to put you on the spot with your portfolio, but let's say you had an unlimited amount of money. Where would you invest it? What would be the strategy you would go with? Would you even go into real estate, or would you go to stock market? How would you spend your money and invest it? Because we're living in a time where, the fluctuations of the real estate market, we've never seen this up and down, up and down.
Well, I mean, it's funny. Like, they're never going to make more land kind of thing. That's, you hear that adage. Given that it's kind of a real estate, podcast, I'd sort of stay there. If you're staying in Canada, the reason I think real estate's smart is if you're building stuff, you can defer taxes better than any other industry. So let's say you're building and you leverage, or you have enough money to build one. Say you build like a 4 or 5 plex. You build it, then you leverage it, and then you rent it out and it pays for itself. It's a non-taxable event. Now you've got an asset that's building its value, but it's a non-taxable event. You just build another one. And then you do it again. You build another one. And you do it again. You build another one. You can literally take a couple $1,000,000 and you can just copy paste that same model, and you can just defer taxes the entire time and just continue using that same amount of money, and you could fill up 34 5-plexes, and you've got like this $100 million portfolio plus. They did it with a couple $1,000,000.
But the question is, would you build that $100 million portfolio here, or would you explore other locations in the world before you invest here?
Well, to be honest, there's a bit of a blind spot in terms of understanding the real estate market on a global scale. I don't. So I would definitely say Canada's probably got more opportunity than most places right now. I know the prices are wonky, but because there's a known quantity shortage for the next 20 years, you can pretty much build your brains out, and there's always going to be somewhere for some buyers. You know what I mean? Now, obviously, you got to be careful in terms of the cost to build, labor, material shortages, taxes, all the other crap. But if you're building a portfolio for rental market, I think you're in good shape.
Are you a landlord?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I more commercial though, but it drives me nuts.
Nice.
So have you had any issues with tenants?
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
commercial is easier to deal with.
Yeah,
It is
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a nightmare.
Yeah, they're still a nightmare.
It's all a nightmare. It's a pain in the ass. But the thing is, you get big enough, then you have, like, I'm nowhere near that, but if you get big enough, you have a property manager, now it's not so bad, right? I think it depends. Like, look, anywhere you go that you're going to make your home, that's where I think you should think about investing if you're going to be investing in something that's within a community, because you don't really understand the nuance of it unless you're there. You don't understand the trends or what's happening, what's going on, how policy changes things, how a new government might change things. So I think you just need to be a little more tuned in to that area. You don't have to live there necessarily, but I really would suggest it. I mean, if you invest in real estate full time and that's all you did, don't pay attention to what I just said. You already know more than me. But if you are getting into it, just work in your own backyard. That's what I've learned. I've learned that what I learned from the restaurant business is build restaurants in areas you know. Don't build them in areas you think you know, because you don't understand them. You don't know the nuance. You just won't get it. So you're better off, like I say, if you're going to be in real estate and you're in Canada, work in Canada, because there are most of the variables, right?
Yep.
So I just think it's easier to keep your finger on the pulse.
There's also another thing I wanted to ask you, because it seems like just watching your videos, there's a lot of the policies that you don't necessarily, the current policies that you don't agree with, or that you're unhappy with certain things that are happening within the country, province, whatnot. Have you considered leaving?
Yeah, a ton of times.
And if you have, where were your target points? Like, where would you move to?
So we were thinking about the States for a while. We were thinking about Texas and Austin. Just because it's kind of like a hotbed for whatever's popular right now. Like, it's just, there's a subculture for everything. Comedy, jiu-jitsu, music, tech, entrepreneurship, fuck, you name it, right? So that was really appealing. But there's a couple things that really held us off. One, obviously we're having a kid, so we're staying here now. And just because our families are here and stuff, you know what I mean? But the thing with the States is the violence is really out of control. And then the other thing is the politics. So they do something funny that we don't do. Their politics are polarizing.
Yeah.
So if you go far right, they go even further left.
Yeah.
See, in Canada, we're magnetized. So the guy in the middle is the one in control, right? It's liberal. So if they shift left, the NDP becomes socialist and the Conservatives become center. That's what happens. We magnetize in this country because we don't want to lose support, because we don't want to lose people on the fence.
Interesting.
Because we have multiple parties here. Because they have a two-party system there, they polarize, and they just continue to become more polarized. Now, the reason that's relevant with what I'm saying is when you think about moving down there, they are going into one of the most... This next election is going to be one of the biggest elections in American history.
Yeah.
And I think, currently I believe Trump's going to win, and I think it's going to create some form of civil war.
I think so too.
I don't know. Look, I don't know if it's going to be mostly digital. I don't know if it's going to be mostly like hands-on and violent. I don't know. But I think it's going to be wildly out of hand for a while.
It's funny. Most people have the same sentiment.
Right. And so there's some people I listen to down in the States that I consider like, not experts on the topic, but like, you ever listen to Andy Frisella?
Of course.
Yeah.
Right. So his take on moving to the States right now is don't do it until the election's over. Don't do it. He's like, wait to see where the chips fall, because you come down here and it can flip upside down very fast. So for us, that kind of took it off the table. The other place we were looking at, which we used to live, was the Cayman Islands. So we used to live in Grand Cayman. My wife and I lived there for 3 years.
Yeah. But
So-
expensive cost of living, no?
Not really. It is, but the thing is you acclimate very quickly, right? The dollar value is 25% higher than the US dollar. So it's static to the US, but 25% higher. So once you're working in their dollar, you're in pretty good shape. Things are reasonably priced when you're on island working in that dollar value. But if you went there for vacation, yeah, it'd be wild, right? Because you'd spend $10 and it would only be like $5 there. So it gets very expensive to vacation to, but once you're there, it's not so bad. The thing is, it's a small island. It's 196 square kilometers. It's like the size of Barrie, right? So it's like a big, small town. So you get a little bit of island fever sometimes. And we thought, it's not really a great place to raise kids because I think they would get sick of it as well,
That's the dilemma we have, is like, we were thinking about moving out of the city.
Yeah.
But then raising kids out of the city, it brings out their curiosity for the city. So
Right.
they may, as soon as they turn 18, they may run back to the city and be like,
That's
let's
okay.
party.
Everybody should leave their hometown, because when you grow up, from 0 to 18, you are one person. And then from 18 to 36, you're a different person. I just chose that number because it was double. It's arbitrary. What you do between 0 to 18 is you learn and grow. You say a lot of things and do a lot of things you don't mean because you don't understand yourself. You don't understand other people's emotions. Your hormones are all changing. You're doing wild stuff when you're in high school. The problem is, if you never leave your hometown, people don't forget. And my childhood was fine. I didn't do anything alarming or anything I ran away from, nothing like that. I just think I've grown so much from the time I was 18, but then I go back home and I go, a lot of people still feel the same way they felt about the people they knew when they were younger. But look how dramatically different you are. And when you don't get outside of that, sometimes it's actually hard to grow in the most important phase of your life, which I really think is, when you pass 18, because you start understanding the world and everything about yourself. If you stay in your hometown, you may be limited to being that person you were when you were a kid, at least in the eyes of everybody else around you, which makes it harder for you to get outside of that shell. So
Yeah, you're right.
I think it's important to move. So not that your kids should go to the city if you move out of town, but I still think that's an important thing to do. Anyway, we are thinking of leaving the city. We're thinking of moving a little further north.
Okay, moving
Nice.
north.
Yeah, nothing crazy. Like we're looking in Erin right now, Orangeville, Caledon, stuff like that.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
I agree.
nice.
That's
nice.
a Vaughn boy.
There's still a lot on my mind. I know what time is.
What time is it?
We're almost 2
We're
hours
almost
in.
2 hours.
Damn.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's a problem. You guys get me on a podcast, I just talk a lot.
No, that's
And
good.
I like.
That's
I
good.
love.
We've
asking
been
questions.
averaging this time
Yeah.
with our
Yeah. So,
lives.
is there anything you want to talk about, like just before we leave, like anything you want to say, like your ventures, which direction you're going, your path? I know you want to take Blender News, like you've got the website thing. You want to take it further. And,
Yeah.
Give it a big plug.
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate it. So the reason I'm doing, there's really only 2 ventures I'm really working on. Well, 3. One is getting into sort of like the private medical world, because we're going we're going to have a 2-tiered health system soon. So I'm kind of in that space a little bit, but that's a little on the side.
New business idea.
I'm not, I'm not, I don't have any medical background. I just know how to run the business, and I know everything there is to know pretty much about like stem cells and regenerative medicine. So that's a good space for me. The other 2 things are really development. So I really took my foot off the gas, but I'm going to lean in hard on that in the new year again, because of the housing shortage. So we're going to get back into doing big development projects. But the other thing for me, which I guess is really the number one, is the news, is the independent media. So the plan with Blender is to build a network that has, 3 to 5 to 7 million users across all platforms, whether it's email, users on the website, podcasts, socials. And it's really about, staying in the independent media space in the United States and Canada. And right now we're really speaking to millennials because I'm a millennial. I know how to speak to myself, right? And after we hit that threshold, the next goal, or the next plan rather, is to build another one, either for Gen X or Gen Z or whatever generation makes sense, because you speak to them differently and you curate the news differently. But the plan is to build 2 or 3 or more of those, maybe 4. We'll see what it looks like. And then at some point, we're going to have 20 to 30 million people that are within our news network. And it's not about having the power or control. It's about utilizing that so that we can keep holding all those other people to account. You know, the Trudeaus of the world, the WEFs of the world, the UN, all these other people. And it's just so people can get like real media, real information, rational news. And by that point, we'll be big enough that we'll be able to actually go do all of our own news as well. So it won't even be consuming third-party information. So that's kind of
who's your current like competition, or who you compare yourself to, or like, you know, we all do that, right?
I don't.
You don't?
No.
You don't have like a news thing that you're like, I want to be like them. I want to be like.
Not really. No. I'm not. It's funny. I don't really pay attention to competition.
You're your own competition.
Yeah, I just feel like I know how to be good enough at what I do. Where if, you know, if I crush, then there's space for me. That's really what it comes down to. Yeah. Now I pay attention to what's happening in the market so that I can stay relevant, but I don't look at it in terms of competition. I just don't see it.
You had a line on your Facebook that I thought was really interesting. I tried to look it up to see if it was like quoted by someone else, but I think you came up with it, and it was, it doesn't matter how long I try to explain the taste, you won't really understand until you take a bite.
Yeah, that's my own. Yeah,
that's your own?
Yeah, that's my own.
That's a clever line, because it's true, because sometimes you try to explain something to someone, and it's almost impossible. They're like, yeah, they kind of get an idea, but until they taste it themselves, until they go down that path, until they fail, until they experience it, they're not gonna know the taste.
Totally, yeah, you get it from experience.
Yeah,
Totally
so you know, you can put that on a shirt and say Jonathan Harvey.
It's Jonathan Harvey.
But thank you so much for.
Yeah, guys, thanks for the chat. I appreciate it.
Of course, man. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, you're awesome.
Where can they plug in all your stuff? Where can they find you?
Right now, really prefer to have people on Blender News. So it's blendrnews.com. You can join the newsletter there. You can go to Blender News on any socials. We have all the handles at Blender News. That's why we took out that second E so we can get them all. Obviously, if you want to follow me, it's Jonathan Harvey. Yeah, just appreciate having everybody on Blender. And then if you like what you read and like what you see, just help spread the news, man. That's really it.
Spread the news.
Spread the news.
Thank you for balancing the needle.
Yeah,
you know, and I think now is more important than ever.
I agree.
To have people like yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So we appreciate it.
I wish you the best with the kid.
Thank you.
And Christmas.
Yeah. Christmas.
Wait, do you have names picked out or no?
Yeah. So Megan's, if it's a boy, his name's going to be Jackson Tyrannosaurus Harvey. Yep, that's sticking. I don't care what you guys say.
Tyrannosaurus?
Yeah, it's his middle name. He's going to be cool as fuck. His middle name's going to be Tyrannosaurus.
That's cool. That's cool.
That's so sick.
And then right now, Megan and I are kind of going back and forth on the girl's name. Meg wants to go with Ruby Hendricks Harvey, so we'll see where we land on the first.
I was expecting another dinosaur.
Yeah, so she wants to go with Hendricks. She's a musician, big music fan.
Jimmy?
So
yeah.
She's so I'm like, all right, cool. So
Ruby
hasn't fully grown on me yet, but I'm not opposed. But I'm not all there yet. So we'll see how it goes.
Are you a dinosaur fan?
Yeah, I just, like I said, I'm curious, right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
I like it.
Do you read the news? There's a lot of dinosaur stuff in there frequently.
Okay.
Anyway.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you believe in the conspiracy that the dinosaurs are not real?
No, that's dumb.
Okay.
Yeah, there's science to back that up.
All right,
yeah,
cool.
Okay.
Just
Earth
checking.
is also not flat. Cool, yeah.
Just checking, just taking your temperature. All right, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
I really appreciate it. I had a blast, man. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Peace.